A blazing question ignites the story: could a single aircraft's roar over turquoise waters become the spark that lights a continent on fire? The United States and Venezuela teeter on the edge of open conflict. In just weeks, both capitals have flexed their might, sending steel and thunder across the Caribbean. The tension feels like a live wire, humming with danger, waiting for a jolt. In the previous minutes we saw the Firestarter, a massive U.S. naval flotilla, 8 warships, amphibious vessels, and a swarm of EFF-35 fighters, carrying roughly 4,500 sailors. This show of power, the largest in the region for decades, suddenly turned from a drug cutter into a looming threat. The question remains, will the next move be a warning or a war cry? A sudden thunderclap pierced the sea on September 2nd. A surgical airstrike, broadcast in grainy footage, obliterated a smuggling boat linked to the Tren de Aragua cartel. 11 crew members perished as the craft burned, metal twisting in a plume of black smoke. The strike's precision sent a clear message: the United States would hunt drug traffickers anywhere they surfaced. Yet the echo of that explosion still reverberates. What will the next target be? U.S. officials, led by the outspoken Marco Rubio, vowed that the counter-drug crusade would not stop at the water's edge. "We will strike wherever cartels hide," he declared, his voice steady as artillery fire. Simultaneously, White House spokesperson Caroline Leavitt labeled President Nicolas Maduro's regime a narco-terror cartel, calling him a fugitive head of crime. The accusations sharpened the blade of rhetoric, and the world wonders, can words alone keep the powder dry? The drama flared when, on September 4, 2 Venezuelan EFF-16 fighters, once supplied by the United States, swooped over an American warship, their engines whining like angry hornets. Washington called it a provocation. President Donald Trump warned that any further daring would be met with a shot-down response. The sky seemed to crack with tension, and the waters below grew darker. Would the next winged strike be the final warning? By mid-month, the conflict spiraled. On September 15, a second kinetic strike was announced. This morning, on my orders, U.S. forces carried out a second strike against violent narco-terrorists in international waters, the president announced, citing 3 dead traffickers and no American casualties. The statement ended with a chilling promise: if you transport deadly drugs to our shores, we will hunt you. The audience holds its breath. What will be the ultimate price of this relentless hunt? Previously, we heard the White House deny Maduro's legitimacy, branding his regime as a narco-terrorist cartel led by a wanted fugitive involved in drug trafficking. Now, Venezuela pushes back hard. Maduro calls the U.S. campaign a thinly veiled attempt to force regime change. He warns America to abandon its violent plans and respect sovereignty and peace throughout Latin America. Despite facing the world's most powerful military, Venezuela refuses to show weakness. Imagine the tension in the Caribbean air. On September 4, just days after the U.S. destroyed the drug vessel, 2 Venezuelan F-16 jets soared low and loud over a U.S. warship nearby, jets America itself once supplied. The engine's roar sliced through the humid sea breeze like a challenge. Washington saw this as an outright provocation. President Trump fired back with a chilling warning: any Venezuelan aircraft putting U.S. forces in danger would be shot down without hesitation. From that moment, the situation took a sharp and dangerous turn. Analysts now whisper that war feels less like a possibility and more like an impending reality. On September 15, Trump announced a second kinetic strike against violent drug traffickers in the South Caribbean. He described the operation with fierce urgency, revealing that U.S. forces targeted dangerous enemies transporting narcotics across international waters, drugs he called a deadly weapon poisoning American communities. 3 male terrorists were killed, with no U.S. casualties. The president's words echoed ominously: if you're moving drugs that kill Americans, we are hunting you. Adding a jarring layer, Trump later admitted 3 boats, not 2, were destroyed during these strikes. Meanwhile, Maduro declared Venezuelan-U.S. relations were destroyed by their bomb threats, slipping from battered ties to total breakdown. Venezuela accused American forces of illegally boarding a fishing vessel, calling it a hostile act designed to justify war escalation. Caracas claims it is prepared to defend itself fiercely. No foreign power will touch the sacred soil of Venezuela. As tensions escalate, both sides parade their military might. Venezuela launched multi-day exercises around the Caribbean island of Lorquilla, an ominous show of force featuring a dozen ships, 24 aircraft, and special naval militia boats. Drones buzzed through the sky, and Russian-made artillery glinted under the sun. Defense Minister Vladimir Padrino Lopez declared readiness for electronic warfare, air defense, and submarine drone operations. He also condemned the threatening, vulgar voice of the United States, fueling a crisis that could ignite at any moment. The scent of salt and oil filled the air as warships churned waters near the island, barely 100 miles from Venezuela's mainland and the scene of recent U.S. interdictions. Some experts believe Caracas chose this location deliberately to rattle Washington and stake a dangerous claim. President Maduro declared Venezuela ready for armed conflict across the entire coastline, mobilizing thousands of troops at the borders and activating militias nationwide. Despite an ongoing economic crisis that hampers Venezuela's ability to maintain advanced military equipment, its air force continues to showcase imposing Russian Su-30 fighter jets armed with potent Kh-31 Krypton anti-ship missiles. These aircraft, though not the newest in the skies, remain formidable adversaries. Their shadow cast long over the Caribbean, sending a clear message: Venezuela stands defiant, prepared, and dangerous. With each dramatic escalation, the question looms larger: is the Caribbean on the edge of war? Or can a sudden spark still be avoided in this deadly dance of power and pride? The storm is gathering, and the world watches, breath-caught, waiting. Tensions simmer between the United States and Venezuela, reaching a boiling point where a single incident could spark a full-fledged conflict. The smoke of hostility has been thickening since late August when U.S. forces dispatched a formidable fleet to the South Caribbean, right off the Venezuelan coast, aiming to combat drug traffickers. This display of might included 8 warships, advanced F-35 fighter jets, and approximately 4,500 personnel, one of the largest military maneuvers in the area in decades. Just days later, on September 2, American forces targeted a vessel connected to the Tren de Aragua cartel in a precision airstrike, killing 11 individuals aboard and destroying the ship. President Trump confirmed this operation via social media, releasing video footage that displayed the strike, a chilling reminder of the escalating conflict. High-ranking officials like Secretary of State Marco Rubio have indicated that the U.S. would not hesitate to escalate its military footprint in Venezuela, framing the campaign as a counter-narcotics operation vital for national security. Constructing a narrative of national sovereignty, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro accused the United States of using drug trafficking as a guise for intervention and regime change in Latin America. On September 4, amid rising tensions, a pair of Venezuelan F-16s soared over U.S. naval ships, a provocative maneuver that drew sharp warnings from Trump, asserting, "If they put us in a dangerous position, they'll be shot down." As the situation spiraled, the U.S. launched a second strike on September 15 against another drug trafficking target, asserting that they were engaged in operations in international waters and reiterated their commitment to dismantling the cartels that have wreaked havoc on American communities for years. Interestingly, Trump mentioned that 3 vessels had been destroyed, unsettling relations further, as Maduro claimed that U.S. threats had shattered diplomatic channels. The war of words has escalated into military might, with both sides conducting exercises close to one another. On September 17, Venezuela began 3 days of military drills on Loarquila Island, deploying a fleet of 12 ships, 20 small boats, and numerous aircraft from its special naval militia, signaling a readiness for confrontation. Venezuelan officials, including Defense Minister Padrino Lopez, prepared for armed conflict at sea, raising alarms of heightened tension in the region. Maduro boldly asserted that Venezuela would mobilize against any U.S. incursion, echoing fervent national pride and a determination to defend their territory. Aircraft from the Venezuelan Air Force, equipped with advanced anti-ship missiles, were showcased, underscoring their military capabilities. However, underlying doubts linger regarding the operational state of these assets, as Venezuela grapples with a dire economic situation, complicating their defense operations. Yet this brewing storm presents more than mere military posturing. As both superpowers continue to flex their muscles, the questions loom: how close are we to a catastrophic miscalculation? Will one misstep lead to an all-out war? With the specter of conflict looming ever larger, only time will tell the true cost of this relentless escalation. The U.S. presence in the Caribbean has grown dramatically. 12 warships, 22 aircraft, and 20 small boats now patrol the waters, while Venezuelan forces prepare a counter-exercise. What does this massive naval ballet mean for the region? The air hums with the thrum of rotor blades, the sea smells of fuel and salt. In response, Venezuela announced a 3-day drill dubbed Sovereign Caribbean. Defense Minister Vladimir Padrino Lopez revealed that armed drones, surveillance drones, and submarine drones will join the air defense lineup. Electronic warfare systems will pulse across the sky, scattering static like an invisible storm. Images broadcast on state TV show Russian-made artillery, amphibious landing craft, and warships gathered off Lower Kila, a 43-square-kilometer island only 110 miles from the mainland and frighteningly close to the spot where a U.S. patrol seized a fishing vessel. Is Caracas deliberately choosing this spot to pressure the U.S.? The question hangs as radar screens flicker with incoming contacts. The president declared the nation prepared for a fight, if necessary, along every coast, from the Colombian border to the eastern shore and from north to south. He claimed troops would man 284 battlefronts, with roughly 25,000 soldiers stationed at the frontier. Calls echo across villages for volunteers to join the reserve, while the minister stressed the need to boost readiness for a possible sea conflict. Meanwhile, the Air Force has flaunted its Su-302 Malawi and Quachas fighters, their wings loaded with Kh-31 anti-ship missiles, soaring over the island's base. Will these jets, despite maintenance woes, tip the balance? The next move could ignite the whole Caribbean. A daring question pulses in the mind: what if the roar of twin-engine fighters could shatter a nation's fragile peace in a single heartbeat? Earlier, officials urged citizens to join the reserve, warning that readiness against the Caribbean must rise. The defense chief declared a surge in naval preparedness for a possible sea clash. The spotlight now turns to Venezuela's sleek Russian-built Su-30 fighters. A grainy video flickers across a social feed, showing the aircraft perched on tarmacs, their wings heavy with grim, silver missiles. The caption boasts the Lion Squadron, the 13th Fighter Group, armed with Kh-31 Krypton anti-ship missiles. Back in the late 2000s, Caracas signed a clandestine ledger with Moscow, buying an unknown stockpile of those missiles. Analysts whisper that the arsenal includes both sea-hunting and radar-seeking variants, ready to strike from the sky. Official tallies claim 21 Su-30 Mk2 jets line the hangars. Yet each jet carries a price tag of $30 to $50 million, a sum that strains a crumbling economy. A local watchdog reports rusted panels, missing parts, and aging avionics that gnaw at operational readiness. Despite the wear, experts still hail the Su-30 as a versatile predator, twin-engine, two-seat, capable of all weather sorties. It can pierce the sound barrier, reaching Mach 2 over 1,500 miles per hour, leaving a thunderous echo that rattles steel and bone. The aircraft's silhouette, outlined against a burning sunset, evokes memories of Soviet factories humming with molten metal. The scent of oil and hot metal swirling in the air. Critics note that newer birds, Russia's Su-57, America's F-35 Lightning II, and F-22 Raptor, have eclipsed its once shining edge. Still, the Su-30 does not bow quietly. Its missiles hang like predatory talons, waiting for a command. The battle-ready pilots tighten their harnesses, feeling the cold steel against their skin, hearing the low rumble of engines revving. A question lingers: will the limited fleet rise to the challenge, or will maintenance woes ground this aerial force just as tensions flare? A sudden alert blares over the base, red lights flashing, an ominous whisper of impending conflict. The cameras capture the jet's wings unfurling, the turbines spitting fire. As the aircraft surge forward, the horizon trembles, and the world holds its breath, waiting for the next move. Previously, we explored the powerful fighter jets that Venezuela fields, twin-engine, two-seat Su-30s designed decades ago in the Soviet Union. These fighters can reach jaw-dropping speeds beyond Mach 2, or over 1,500 miles per hour, and boast a range stretching nearly 1,900 miles at high altitudes. Armed to the teeth, they carry a deadly arsenal from air-to-surface missiles to a rapid-firing 30mm cannon with 150 rounds. Their advanced radars and targeting systems let pilots hunt down threats like shadows in the sky. Despite these sophisticated toys and Venezuela's bold claims of militia readiness, the reality is chilling. America's naval power in the South Caribbean Sea far eclipses their display. Picture this: the mighty USS Iwo Jima, a Wasp-class amphibious assault ship, anchors the fleet like a steel giant. Alongside it sail the USS Fort Lauderdale and USS San Antonio transport docks, bristling with troops and armored vehicles. The USS Lake Erie, a guided missile cruiser with destructive reach, moves silently amid destroyers USS Gravely and USS Jason Dunham. The USS Minneapolis-St. Paul cuts through the waves as a literal combat ship, shadowed beneath by a stealthy nuclear-powered attack submarine lurking unseen beneath the surface. Hovering high above, at least 10 of America's sleek F-35 fighter jets patrol the skies, unmatched in speed and technological edge. A Boeing P-8 Poseidon reconnaissance plane scans the ocean expanse with eyes sharper than steel. Thousands of Marines and sailors stand ready, their boots sinking into the decks, muscles tense with anticipation. This is not just a fleet, it is a floating fortress, embodying raw power and precision far beyond Venezuela's aging troop show. But the story deepens. While Caracas flaunts the dust of its old war machines and militia marches, the U.S. Southern Command has been conducting its own intense training exercises. Videos surfaced showing the crack sounds of rifles, the thunderous roar of helicopters slicing through the humid Caribbean air, armored vehicles rolling across sandy beaches during amphibious landings, all under the blazing tropical sun. The smell of salt water mixed with burning diesel, and the rhythm of disciplined footsteps create a tense symphony of preparation. How far will this dangerous dance escalate? With two giants arrayed opposite each other, both flexing strength and probing for weaknesses, what unseen spark might ignite this volatile powder keg? Will diplomacy hold, or does the murmuring tension carry the roar of war? The stage is set, the armies poised. In this charged atmosphere thick with smoke and steel, every move counts, and peace feels more fragile than ever before. Tensions between the United States and Venezuela have plunged so deep, it feels like war is just a heartbeat away. Both nations are flexing their military power openly, daring each other to make the next move. But behind this bold display lies a ticking clock, counting down to a potential disaster neither side truly wants, yet neither can afford to lose. The question now is, who will blink first in this high-stakes chess game in the Caribbean? In early September, the U.S. Marine Expeditionary Unit unleashed a powerful show of force near Puerto Rico. Videos captured fierce amphibious landing drills, troops storming landing craft amid swirling clouds of dust, helicopters thundering overhead, and armored vehicles rumbling across the landscape. The soundtrack was chilling, a relentless ticking, like a bomb's fuse burning down, warning that something massive was on the horizon. Just days later, images of MEF-35 fighter jets lined up on the tarmac sent another unmistakable message: here is American military might, sharp and ready. The caption bristled with confidence: these jets, hailed as the finest in the world, were prepared to dismantle deadly cartels that have haunted American communities for decades. It was a declaration of intent. The words echoed loud enough to stir unease in the halls of Venezuelan power. Our enemies know we're the best, the message boomed, a taunt as much as a warning. But Venezuela is not hiding. They've responded with their own moves, unveiling some of their strongest military assets and ramping up troop deployments in a show of defiance. President Maduro and his allies claim America's anti-cartel campaign is merely a mask for a violent regime change. Government officials push back harder, turning up the volume on conspiracy theories like the claim that the American strikes on vessels were targeting innocent boats without drugs. When Venezuela's Interior Minister Diosdado Cabello spoke on September 17, he asked pointedly, who actually saw the drugs on those boats? His words drip with skepticism and mockery. The scene is set like a thriller, two giants squaring off in a deadly dance of power and prestige. Fires are burning beneath the surface as the U.S. flaunts cutting-edge planes ready to strike, while Venezuela rings the shorelines with militia and high-tech Russian-made weaponry. Neither side is willing to back down. But as the clock continues its ominous ticking, one must wonder what will finally ignite the spark that plunges this standoff into open conflict? Will it be a misstep, a misunderstood order, or something far more sinister than anyone expects? The Caribbean never smelled so tense. Tensions between the United States and Venezuela have sunk to a dangerous low, teetering on the edge of outright conflict. Have you ever wondered how close two nations can come to war before everything spirals beyond control? The simmering clash in the Caribbean is exactly that, a powder keg waiting for one misplaced spark. The U.S. has ramped up its military presence in the South Caribbean Sea, with a flotilla of 8 warships and nearly 4,500 troops deployed. Precision strikes have already destroyed multiple vessels tied to violent cartels, turning the sea into a volatile chessboard of power. Yet, Venezuela's Interior Minister, Diosdado Cabello, throws doubt on these attacks, claiming no one has seen the alleged drugs on the sunken boats. His question, who saw the drugs, echoes loudly, casting shadows over America's justifications. Meanwhile, Cabello praises Venezuela's own anti-cartel operations, boasting over 60 tons of narcotics seized this year, the largest haul since 2010. But can such claims be trusted? Both he and President Maduro are under international sanctions, and many believe their statements serve as a veil to deflect scrutiny for their government's supposed cartel ties. Behind the scenes, Caracas is crafting a narrative, a desperate story to frame any American military action as part of a grand imperial plot against Venezuela's sovereignty. Reinforcing this strategy, Maduro openly highlights his country's growing relationship with China. He hopes Beijing's diplomatic support will deter or complicate U.S. moves. Yet, analysts argue that China's objections are largely rhetorical. The idea of Chinese troops stepping into Venezuela's rocky waters feels far-fetched. The real tide is the massive American naval force lurking off the coast, ready to strike with surgical precision. This stark contrast between Venezuela's political maneuvering and U.S. military might raises a critical question: what happens if the U.S. steps beyond strikes and exercises and sends troops ashore? With amphibious assault ships at the ready, it would require just a single command for hundreds or thousands of Marines to disembark onto Venezuelan land. Such a move could shatter the fragile stability, plunging the region into chaos. Could the Caribbean become the red-hot flashpoint for a storm no one anticipated? The air grows thick with tension, the distant rumble of warships echoes like a looming thunderclap. Every move here matters, every decision, a step closer to the brink. What will ignite this precarious fuse? One thing is certain: the eyes of the world are fixed on this unfolding showdown. To recap, the American military presence is poised dangerously close to Venezuelan shores. Landing ships and troops are in the region, mere waiting for a command. One order could unleash a flood of Marines onto Venezuelan soil, a nightmare scenario that Venezuelan President Maduro has vocally resisted, labeling it an imperial invasion. But what happens if the conflict escalates before boots even touch land? Imagine this: U.S. forces don't wait to engage on the beaches. Instead, they start targeted raids deep inside Venezuela. High-value cartel headquarters, key smuggling routes, nerve centers of illicit operations, these become precise targets. The U.S. military's intelligence network likely already knows where many of these strongholds lie. Precision airstrikes or special operations could remove cartel leaders in a flash, destabilizing their grip. And what if the U.S. goes a step further? Picture Tomahawk land attack missiles, sleek, deadly, with a range beyond 1,000 miles, launched quietly from Navy warships patrolling the South Caribbean Sea. They strike fast, hitting cartel facilities inland before anyone realizes what happened. This silent thunder would cripple the backbone of drug trafficking operations, shutting down networks on their own soil, not just intercepting boats in open waters. Sticking to maritime interceptions is another option. The U.S. continues its naval blockade, hunting and destroying smuggling vessels wherever they appear in the South Caribbean. Each attack weakens the cartel's operations, forcing them to shift routes, lose precious time, money, and trust. Such pressure could fracture cartel loyalties, even turning factions against the Maduro regime itself. Could this unravel the Venezuelan government from within, sparking political earthquake? But Maduro isn't passive. His warnings echo in the humid Caribbean air: no foreign boots will set foot on Venezuelan soil. His patrol jets, some handed down from past U.S. munificence but now fiercely Venezuelan, buzz provocatively near American warships, flirting with disaster. Is it just a show of defiance, or a deliberate challenge meant to provoke a response? The tension hums in the salty wind, thick with the scent of ocean spray and military fuel. Every passing helicopter's whir, every ship's horn, every alert on a radar screen crackles with potential catastrophe. One misstep could ignite the powder keg. Will the United States confine itself to maritime control? Or will it escalate with covert land strikes and missile barrages? And how far will Maduro push back before the fragile calm shatters? The answer hangs like thunder on the horizon, waiting to explode. Tensions between the United States and Venezuela are mounting, with the specter of war looming ever closer. The sparks of this conflict ignited back in August, when the U.S. dispatched a formidable fleet of naval vessels to the South Caribbean to combat rampant drug trafficking. This imposing armada comprised 8 warships and included cutting-edge F-35 fighter jets along with thousands of military personnel. The message was stark: America was asserting its dominance in the region. On September 2, things escalated dramatically. A precision airstrike hit a drug smuggling ship associated with a notorious cartel, resulting in 11 casualties. U.S. officials, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio, made it clear that they would not hesitate to strike again. They condemned Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, labeling him a narco-terrorist, as tensions reached a boiling point. In a fierce rebuttal, Maduro accused the U.S. of using its anti-drug campaign as a pretext for regime change. He declared that his government would not back down, mobilizing Venezuela's military response in a show of strength. A few days later, Venezuelan fighter jets flew dangerously close to U.S. warships. President Trump responded with fierce warnings of retaliation, making it clear that further provocations would not be tolerated. Only days later, President Trump announced that American forces had executed a second strike against drug traffickers, emphasizing the threat these cartels posed to U.S. national security. Relations deteriorated further, with Maduro describing them as destroyed and warning of dire consequences if American forces continued their aggressive stance. The U.S. seemed prepared for any scenario. Military boots could soon be on Venezuelan soil, transforming the conflict into a full-scale ground war. This possibility loomed as a nightmare for Maduro, forcing him to double down on his rhetoric and military readiness. Venezuela began large-scale military drills, showcasing its arsenal and revealing an unsettling commitment to confrontation. As the scenario unfolded, Maduro proclaimed his nation's readiness for an armed fight if necessary, mobilizing thousands of troops across the country, further escalating the tensions. Despite the dire economic situation in Venezuela, which hindered military maintenance, the dramatic show of force continued. Advanced aircraft, including Russian-made Sukhoi fighters, roared above, cloaked in the rhetoric of sovereignty and resistance. Yet, the audience was captivated by a shocking twist. What if all this posturing was nothing more than a show? Analysts speculated whether Maduro's bravado could lead him to provoke the U.S. into an irreversible conflict. Would the tiny nation make a dangerous move, unaware of the colossal military might it faced? In a world teetering on chaos, the question looms: who will strike first? As each side inches closer to conflict, the stakes rise, raising fears that this explosive situation could escalate into an all-out war. The countdown has begun, and the world holds its breath, wondering how far Venezuela is willing to go to protect its sovereignty, and at what cost. The battle lines have been drawn, and the question remains: can diplomacy extinguish the flames of war, or is conflict now an inevitability? The fate of nations hangs precariously in the balance, as the world watches, waiting for the next move in this high-stakes game.